Thank you for doing this interview. When we started Counter Magazine, I actually watched The New Radical. That was a huge inspiration in starting our project. We committed to stuff early on, like, we would never have a paywall on the site for any information and stuff like that. So, yeah, just appreciate your time and being willing to do the interview. Um, so I like that we were using free software. I like that you recommended that. So I was just, my first question was basically, could you talk about, what inspires your commitment to free or open source software?
um, the techno we basically technology it like runs like modern society. So if we don't have access to that technology, then we're enslaved by it, essentially. You know,
And you said it wrongs modern society.
yeah, it's like it's fundamental. So if we don't have access to that technology, um, then we're in a vulnerable position.
For sure, for sure. And how, like, are you able to, like, all the software that you use currently, like, are you able to, is it all free? Or,
Uh,
yeah.
I yeah, I mean, yeah, for the most part, yeah, I think so. I think I have this laptop where I do calls and stuff. I might have uh, Zoom installed, or sometimes maybe use Google Meet for some calls. But yeah, in general, most of what I use is free software.
Okay.
I'm not doing like much video editing or music making, where I know I'm a developer. So in terms of like writing code or doing math or any of that stuff, the open source tooling is excellent. It's the
Mhm,
best.
mhm. And was this something that you were committed to, like, since you started using the internet? Like, was this kind of a foundational principle, from a young age?
Yeah. So when I was very young, I I was very much into politics and questions around economics and society in general. Um, and also, I was into technology. I was doing programming when I was a teenager, and one of my friends one day says to me, "Amir, have you heard about Linux?" And I said, "No, what is that?" And he said, "Oh, well, you have it's an operating system." And I said, "Oh, an operating system? What's that?" And he goes, "Well, you've got Windows and you've got Mac and etc. Well, you can change that. You can put other things on there." I was like, "Whoa, really?" I didn't even It didn't even occur to me I could change the operating system on my computer. And he's like, "Yeah, it's Linux, and there's no company that owns it. It's made by people all across the world." I was like, "Oh, really?" And then, like, I read about it. I was like, "Wow, that's incredible. There's another way to make technology. It doesn't have to be that there's a company that owns it. There's this other model." And for me, that was the example of a radical economics, which was in cyberspace. So it was even more cool for me, just and to see the scale of what they were creating. Linux, it's like a big deal. That for me was incredible. And then I was like, okay, like, wow, I'm all in. Let's go. Same way people who like discover Bitcoin
Mhm.
or crypto today, like same people who have this description when they first discovered Bitcoin, and they're like, "Whoa, we can have an economy like a non-state economy in cyberspace." It was a similar moment with Bitcoin for me as well. Mind blowing. I'm sure for a lot of people.
Mhm. Yeah, and I'm curious, like, as to what were some of your fondest, early internet memories, things that you were creating, very early on.
Yeah, I was working on 3D engines, and that was very fun because doing like game engines or 3D software, etc. There are many different areas of computing that are involved. There's like stuff to do with the system, the file system, like managing the resources, because you know you have to stream things real time, has to be efficient, input devices, etc. Graphics, you know, a lot of also mathematics, linear algebra, etc.
And how old were you?
Tooling,
Yep. Sorry.
like yeah, like 19, 20, that kind of time.
Okay.
18.
Yeah. Were
Yeah,
there?
and yeah, it was very interesting because I had to adapt and learn many different things. So it was very healthy and also very challenging, a lot of difficult problems to solve. And also the code base that we were working on was 500,000 lines of code. So I was in a big team of people, like 10 people. Well, it's not huge, but it's quite a big team and a big code base. And so I had to learn how to work in a team of people. So that was a very useful knowledge or experience that had a very important role later on in my life.
And were there any like websites or software at the time, like you know, maybe that aren't even around anymore, that you know have sentimental value to you?
Blender 3D.
Okay.
It's still around, and it's one of the most successful open source software that exists. And actually, I worked with the Blender team quite a bit. You know, they do these 6-month video projects. They did a video game project, and I was a member of one of those teams, which is Project Apricot. And Blender's spectacular software. It's in so many ways, it's incredible. Like if you use any commercial 3D software, like 3D Studio Max or Maya, when you open it, there's this splash screen while it's loading, and it takes like a couple of minutes. Blender, it's bam, instantly loads, and it's snappy and it's fast and efficient. It's and you can use it as a power user, so you can do everything with it. It's complete, unlike the other 3D software, it's completely customizable. You can customize your workspace however you want. You have maximum freedom over the software. So I got really into Blender. I was like, whoa, this software is like a gem, like a hidden gem. But since then, Blender has like grown from strength to strength. Its community is unmatched. Now it's like it's like a competitor with the big commercial software, you know, and there's interest from commercial industry in keeping Blender like on top, you know, because loads of people depend on it. So really interesting software, a huge success story in terms of free software open source.
Yeah, and other than Blender, you know, I think this would be of a particular interest to our readers who, you know, would be interested in this stuff. You know, what is some other good free open source software, or even just free software, that you really recommend that people use and might not be aware of?
So I use Pandoc quite a lot. I write MD documents, and you know, and there's a little tool called ENTR. If anybody goes to my GitHub, I have a repo. It's GitHub Narodnik is my username. I have a repo called MD2PDF, and a lot of academics, they use this software called Overleaf, and it's disgusting because it's like this ugly web interface with ads that even show, and they use it because they write you know, these white papers or these academic PDFs, and they want to see them real time rendered. But I have a perfect setup where I have Zathura, which is a PDF viewer, and I run this MD auto script, and I can just type the MD, which is plain text, save it, and I see the change real time as the PDF. And so I can just be writing the PDF, doing all the math formulas, tables, etc. So that's really fun. Vim, I use NeoVim. You know, that's like an extension of me, basically. Like, you know, just I've used it for many years. I've customized it to my workflow. So that's an amazing tool. The terminal in general, you know, when you get good at the terminal, there's like You know, it's it's like it's very comfy. You know, like I have this computer, which is my impure computer, where I have all the chat apps like Signal and etc.
Yeah.
And then I have my other computer, which is pure. And when I'm on there, I feel peaceful. I feel calm. It's like comfy, you know.
Yeah, yeah, you have like it's just it's to your vision.
Yeah, and another thing I like, I do a lot of math, is Sage, which is an algebra system.
Okay.
So, like when I'm doing crypto, I'm like using this algebra system to prototype different algos and stuff like that. Python is an amazing tool, just making little scripts on your system to do stuff. I liked because I like when I'm studying math, I like download these YouTube playlists, and I have a little Python script where it downloads the playlist and it renames the video titles, so that they can be copied to Android phone, and they're lowercase, and it adds a number at the beginning, and it also downloads the video descriptions and puts it in a text file. So I just have a folder with the entire playlist, and when I like list the files, it's perfectly organized from zero to etc. And then I can play it using MPV, which is my video player, which it has keys to speed up and slow down the video. So when I'm watching videos, I'm like watching some math video. There's the bit which I already know the stuff. I just speed up the video, so I'm just like watching it at like 2x, 3x, and then when it reached a bit where it's a bit harder, I need that info, I like slow it down, and I'm like speeding up and slowing down the videos. So that's really cool setup and fun.
Yeah, I love that. We'll definitely go back and link the software you recommended. So if there's any names I missed or anything like that, I'll go back and I might have to ask a clarifying question. But thank you. Yeah. What do you think of paywalls for information? You see them everywhere: New York Times, Washington Post. I mean, like all the news basically is paywalled, and I'm curious as to your thoughts on that.
I use the bypass paywall Firefox script. So a lot of these websites, I don't have to deal with the paywall.
Mhm.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, it seems like for all those old trad media, they don't have like a business model, so they're like trying all these random things like paywalls, advertising.
Mhm.
Maybe they need to like. I mean, like Blender is a really good example. Blender 3D, which it's a very high quality software for 3D art. They're not selling the product, so how do they fund it? And it just has such a great community where they release books or they release merchandise, or they even do the every 6 months they do these film projects where they gather a team of people to produce a film using the software, and there's a donation drive, and 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 those experiences are really good because they have the team of devs together with the artists, and while they're there, the devs get to see the problems the artists have and they fix them like real time. Um, and and the community, they fund that, they do the donation drive, and the community's like, oh yeah, let's get this, and then they have other people that are like funding them. So Blender is like an example where you have like a great community, and they're just like invested in keeping this software like solvent, and it seems to work. They just have really good community management. There's other projects where like for example, if I use like video editing on Linux, it's like very lacking, but it's a similar multimedia software, a power user thing, yet there isn't a good alternative.
Yeah.
Partly, I put it down to like Blender had the good leadership of Tun Roosendahl.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do think trad media, it's probably just going to have to die. Like nobody trusts it anymore.
Yeah.
Like everybody thinks it's full of lies.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, on all sides for sure. It's definitely been kind of dismaying to see throughout our lives. you know, kind of that early internet idealism and to what the internet is today. At least, you know, on the mainstream level, people feel like there's maybe only a few sites they can visit. I'm curious as to your thoughts about the direction of the internet and where it's going and where it will go.
Yeah, that's interesting because, you know, I was very much part of that wave, you know, post 2000, where everybody was like, oh, the internet, it's a global consciousness. And if only we can just bring this magical tool where all of information and knowledge is at anybody's fingertips, we could radically improve society for the better. That internet idealism that you talk about, obviously, you know, as we've seen things turn out, it hasn't turned out to be quite so simple. Actually, you know, big tech has made use of the internet as this kind of surveillance apparatus, which is the danger to human freedom. So, and even like now in crypto, we're at this juncture point where all the crypto projects, they're playing this game where it's about raising money, appeasing certain groups of people in order to have their valuations pump, and yet everybody's like searching, going like, oh, we can feel that our strength is evaporating, and how do we recover? Because even though back in 2010, 2011, you know, we were small, we were unheard of, there was still power there. There was some kind of vibrancy. And if I give the analogy of or tell a little story here, which is in the early 90s when Linux was born and the free software movement at that time, and they were creating stuff that was innovative. People were going, wow, this software that this movement is creating doesn't exist anywhere. It's like truly new and unique and special. And as the movement gained momentum, people started to go, okay, like, you know, I would like to work on this full time. You know, I'd like to have a team, you know, resources, and we need to think about business models. And the idealists kind of pushed back against that and then kind of rejected it. So those people, that kind of side of the free software movement, started to branch off and formed the open source movement. And there was this divergence where the open source movement started to go, okay, it's not about freedom, it's not about the values or the core principles, it's about purely utilitarian arguments, that it's objectively better, that it's cheaper, that it's etc. Post 2000, we saw Ubuntu come, and you know, there was this promise that, you know, we would bring Linux to the mainstream. You know, the mass adoption meme. We have a similar thing in crypto. You know, like there's like you know, all the big money interests that come in, and people are like, you know, we need to take the game to the next level. But then what happened with Linux was, it was like there was this idea of Linux on the desktop. Like the Linux would come to the desktop of everybody, and you know, the people go, this is it. This is the year when Linux would be on the desktop. Yeah. And then it wouldn't happen. And then the next year again, like, okay, actually, this is the year of Linux on the desktop. This is the year that Linux reaches mainstream. And then it wouldn't happen. And it became like a joke, like an in-joke, like, oh, this is the year of Linux on the desktop, haha. Yeah. And then Mac came out of nowhere, and we were like, shit, like, we just got blindsided, you know, that totally passed us by. Android phones, the mobile phone came and just passed us by. So, you know, what happened was we stopped innovating. We started to play catch up with the Windows And Linux, instead of being its own thing, became just like a shitty alternative, where it was like, okay, what is the goal? It's Windows, you know, and okay, we have to, and always we're just like following behind. We're not like charting our own path. And Firefox, you know, went from 70% market share down to less than 1%, and I feel like now there is a dawning realization in the Linux community, especially with the anti-system D, you know, etc., and you know, all this new modern software that's popping up, which people are like conceptualizing. Okay, how do we recreate classic components of the Linux desktop, but in a modern style? And the realization is this: Linux is not a Windows and it's not a Mac. Linux is its own thing. Linux, the Windows and the Mac, their business model is about entrapping or enslaving many users, because then they can tax them. They can tax each one of them. The Linux is a different type of economic model. Linux is about building self-sovereign infrastructure that allows us, our communities, to be economically powerful. This is the value proposition of cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, it's not about getting mass adoption from normies. It's about building a new financial system, the agorist parallel financial infrastructure. And in particular, you know, there is this, there is fragile crypto and there is anti-fragile crypto. And we're seeing this divergence play out. And the end result of that will be there is a RegFi and there is a Darkfi. And the RegFi will be the side of crypto that is zero. It will be meaningless. It will be powerful. And the Darkfi side of crypto will be subterranean. It will be innovative. It will be exciting. It will be where all the interesting software comes out and is developed. And that's what crypto has to do. And you talked about this fight for freedom and technology and the internet is, you know, we have to look back within ourselves, rediscover our core principles, form a strategy, and struggle for that, instead of just getting trapped into the same Silicon Valley bullshit narratives that, you know, mean that we end up, because like, look at the mobile phone. The mobile phone is full of crappy applications. Like, every company wants you to install their app, and they're rubbish. They're like, when you try to use them, they're buggy, and they're like obnoxious. And it's like, okay, like, why are we trying to copy that failed business model? It's obviously a failed paradigm of computing. We should be creating a different paradigm of computing that's empowering, that's powerful. So I see the opportunity there. But it's gonna, like, it needs like people to wake up, you know, and to start to like mobilize and move as a movement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on that note, can you tell us about, you know, the current status of your newest project, Darkfi?
Yeah, we are there. So yeah, Darkfi is basically the leader in this like anonymous. So Darkfi is anonymous, generalizable smart contracts. And in this sector, we basically have zero competitors. There are other projects that are going like, oh, we're creating a ZKL1, but most of them, they use that just as a marketing buzzword. So it's all a scam. The ones that are trying to do privacy, they don't offer generalizable smart contracts. They're just like fixed functionality for the most part. Whereas Darkfi actually has that working here and now on our testnet. So we're way ahead of everyone technically on technical fundamentals. We have like even like advanced features like anonymous protocol-owned liquidity, which enables us to create applications such as the anonymous DAO. We've made the world's first fully on-chain anonymous DAO, token weighted treasury governance. Not only that, we have fully anonymous staking, which protects the validators. So a big problem is the OFAC compliance lists, where they can censor validators because their IP address is known or their identity is known. So we are the only crypto project, I don't know any other crypto project which has an anonymous staking algorithm. Thirdly, we have no trusted setup. None of all the other projects, they have this trusted setup, which means if for example, I deploy a smart contract for swaps to enable people to trade, to do OTC trades with each other, then if you do an OTC trade with someone, even though you can read the code of the smart contract, you have to trust my trusted setup. So even then I could I have something hidden up my sleeve. So Darkfi has no trusted setup. So we're way ahead, and we're on track, to reach our mainnet and release. We've just released our alpha testnet. We're going to release our beta testnet. Then we're going to do the code audits, and then after that, release the mainnet.
Okay. Very cool. So other than Darkfi, what are the most exciting current technologies to you? From crypto, AI, just kind of all across the board.
Yeah, in terms of,
if any,
I'm very interested in all the new cryptography that's being developed. It's all really exciting. Outside of cryptography, there's a lot of very interesting stuff happening with space research.
Okay.
Exoplanet detection, which a few years ago used to be very difficult. Basically, you had to detect the wobble of a star and then use that wobble of the star to build a model of the solar system, and then kind of be able to pinpoint with overwhelming statistical accuracy that there is some planet of some size, etc. But now they're actually able to kind of photograph planets, or at least the dimming of the stars as they cross in front of the star, and they're making new kind of telescopes which like a star shade, the spin, and block out the kind of, I don't know what you call it, the rays of the sun, so that they can see the planets more accurately. And the telescopes are getting more and more advanced. So the accuracy or the precision of the imagery is basically, if you have you could have a telescope with a really big dish, but you can also have multiple telescopes which triangulate an image separated by distance, and they can use lasers to line up or something like that. So I'm kind of curious where that ends up in 50 years. Will we be able to see the surface of another planet? I saw a proposal the other day where a scientist was saying, oh, maybe we can, if we made a very tiny probe that was 1 gram, we could actually accelerate it to the neighboring star systems using lasers to power them, flying at some percentage of the speed of light. They could reach there within 15 years, and then we could directly observe the planets in another solar system. That, for me, imagine if we were able to observe another planet in another solar system, and maybe if the resolution of the planet wasn't so accurate, we could see the color of the surface. Maybe we could see that as the season of the planet changes, we could see the color change. Go oh, there's vegetation on the planet. Or maybe even if we had higher resolution, we could see evidence of civilization or stuff like that. So yeah, very, very interested to know what's out there. You know, there's this saying where people say like, oh, too old to explore the world, but too young to explore outer space.
Yeah. Hey, that's I guess that's the time we're living in. Does AI interest you if at all, or does it? Yeah, like what are your thoughts on kind of the acceleration of AI right now?
Yeah, I really am not able to comment because it's not my specialty. Like, I know that GPT-3 and now 4 is making obsolete a lot of low tier work. You know, like these like filler articles.
Yeah.
And I saw some of the automated coding programming, but I wasn't too impressed by it. I was like, oh, this is like junior work that's just being automated. Like, that's maybe a good thing. Like, forces people to. I really think we're in the age of like moving away from low skilled industrial era labor to information age. You know, like high skill work, and like more generalized as well, like creative. So I see that as like a natural or even healthy process. There are people going like, oh, you know, we're basically not far off, or we're trending towards artificial general intelligence. You know, so yeah, maybe we reach it, maybe we don't. I don't know. I can't tell myself.
Yeah.
What's happening? Quantum computing. I'm not sure if it will happen. It's kind of one of those things that they've been talking about for a very long time, and you know, not much seems to have been actually delivered. However, on the other hand, I just saw the UK government announce 3 billion being put into quantum computing research. So, you know, maybe it's happening. You know.
So this is kind of a random question, but obviously, you know, I've well, not obviously, but I've, you know, learned about your work in Rojava. So what was the most important lesson you learned there, do you feel?
Yeah, the most important lesson by far was my maturation of politics, where before, you know, I had these anarchist ideas about revolution, you know, that there will be a revolution and etc. And, you know, we will work and, you know, somehow the revolution materialized. But being there, I understood that in terms of actual change, it comes about because there is a struggle between groups of people united by a vision and with a strategy, and that is a really core fundamental part. And in particular, their critique of anarchism is something that I completely have taken to heart, which is, if I explain that when the Syrian government collapsed, you know, it wasn't just that suddenly like people took up arms and bam, made a revolution. It was that there was a revolutionary organization with a cadre that had been, you know, many of them have been in the mountains for, you know, decades, studying political philosophy. And, you know, and then in that power vacuum, you know, when they came into society, into the cities, you know, started to organize people, because in a society, you need, for example, in a military, you know, people need to be armed, they need to be trained, they need to be organized into units, you need to have a military strategy. But in a society itself, you know, you have many different areas. You have your legal system or your law, you have your economy, you have your education. So like, if we're really talking about fundamentally changing society, of overthrowing the nation state, these are really important questions that we need to discuss and conceptualize. Okay, in this new society, what will education, healthcare, law, self-defense. What will that look like? And the problem with that, anarchists, is that their complete rejection of all forms of authority, even legitimate forms of authority, meant that they were unable to effectively organize to implement change, to move towards change. So any form of, and this is a big problem I see with, for example, if I give an example of NASA, which is an which for 50 years has not been able to go to the moon, because like inside of NASA, it's very political. There are all these guys, essentially bureaucrats or people sitting in chairs, and they have their little group and they're doing their little science projects, investigating something in low Earth orbit, some kind of science experiment. But to really get to the moon or to get into outer space, you need a political willpower, you need a direction, you need a strategy to get there. And that's something they lack. They lack that strategy. So if we want to implement change, or if as a crypto movement, we want to deliver on our, if you make a software project, you're like, okay, here's our team of people. Okay, what's the roadmap? Okay, what's our architecture? What do we want? What do we want to create? Okay, this is what we want to create. Okay, let's conceptualize what will the components be. Yeah. That's the thing we want to create. That's like the vision. That's the ideal aspect. Okay, we want a free society, empowered society, democratic society. There should be no nation state. The nation state is anti-human, anti-nature. Okay, so what will our governance look like? What will our economics look like? Okay, fine. Okay, what's the roadmap to get there? What are the steps that we need to achieve along the way? And each step should be incremental and achievable. Mm-hmm. And the goal itself should also be very practical, so that whenever people start going off on tangents, you can focus, you can refocus that energy. Because I've seen it happen so many times with political movements. People are going people get excited, start to mobilize, and the initial phases, the ball starts rolling and everybody starts throwing all of their energy, investing themselves, immersing themselves completely. There's flow, there's creation, and that's power. But then after a while, it's not clear what's the direction or paths to take. It's not clear because problems, or even decisions, they're not always black or white. There's merits to both ways. Mm-hmm. And if you lack an analysis or a conceptual framework or a paradigm, you're not able to discern, or properly analyze what is the correct path to go upon. Mm-hmm. And so then as a movement, you start to become fragmented, and you start, and soon that energy which had momentum starts to get diverted. And not only that, in a hostile environment, where there's nation state actors or intelligence or etc. that is opposed to revolutionary changes that threaten the status quo, or even people in society that for example, when you tell a radical message and there's peer pressure, or there's some kind of pressure, for example, Darkfi, we're semi-cancelled from some of the more established crypto groups, because they're oh, radicalism's bad, they're rocking the boat and they're going to draw heat on crypto. But so against those kind of forces of infiltration and subversion, it's very easy, as if you're not a coherent organization, to easily get split off, to be vulnerable to divide and conquer tactics. Mm-hmm. So when And the most important thing, the really key part of having a strong organization is not rules. It's not some system of organizing. Everybody always asks me that about Rojava. They're like, okay, what's the system? I'm like, okay, that is Western positivism that's like brainwashed people. And that's the problem with anarchism as well as ideology is it's too influenced by positivist notions where it's like, okay, like we have to create this new system and then everything's solved. Yeah. But it's not. That's the key part is actually the belief in people. It's the spiritual aspect of society, and in particular to be strong, like for crypto to be strong, like to really fulfill its promise of an agorist parallel economic system, we have to nurture our intellectual capabilities. We have to foster our philosophy, and we have to create strategy. And creating strategy means like putting our minds together and like discussing important issues, writing texts, you know, that are circulated within our community that other people read, that provide some kind of that allow people that when they, because creative people, you know, they as well, like especially skilled people, etc., like they're doing complex work or doing creative work. You can't like direct people, go like do this, do that, you know, because like to create something, it's a process. You have to like put your mental capabilities onto that thing, and you have to study other things and conceptualize your thoughts, and slowly something begins to emerge and be born. So how do we as an organism like move in a coherent way? Well, that's the role that strategy plays, and that's why we form consensus by, you know, this process. And that's something I see that is very lacking. Everybody builds these organizations in crypto, which are like mini nation states. You know, there's like a CEO, they're like copying even the classic corporate structure. And then underneath that, you know, they have some like, you know, heads of XYZ or blah, blah, and they like get the VC money, and there's no role played by ideology or philosophy. There's no macro thesis. Yeah. It's like, oh, we're building X because this will pump and be valuable. And then, you know, they're part of that. They play into that that network of people that is giving money to projects. Because look, we talk with investors and VCs, and so like there's like crypto native VCs. They make their money using crypto, and they're smart and they're ideological. But then there's like VCs that are like, they're like kind of retarded. They're a bit stupid. Mm-hmm. They're like not interesting people. They're like cogs in a machine. Like they're completely part of the system. So like you can imagine these guys, they're like suits, and they just go and they like hang out with other guys that are just boring, exactly like them. And they like talk about like, I don't know, regulations or like the most boring, inane thing you can imagine. And those guys, they're extremely rich. They have access to vast amounts of resources. They don't create anything. They don't do anything original. The reason why they can tap into that wealth is because they're like that. They're like tools, essentially. The system prioritized those kind of people, not the creative, free-thinking types that, you know, could be a liability. You know, I even heard someone explain it to me like that. Oh, you know, when you make a successful corporation, you know, you can't have too many alphas. You need to have betas, because then the alphas will fight and it will get torn apart. But like when we build our organization, we want people that are like that. We want people that have energy and ambition and fight. You know, like a bit of conflict's not bad. You know, like it's healthy sometimes. Yeah. You want to have like discussion, and the important point is having a philosophy. It's like having like a reason why you make the thing. That's like what make your artwork your software or your creation or your science, etc., like have value, have meaning, is because there's a belief behind it.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels like there is something more kind of like metaphysical or spiritual about, you know, the energy, just harnessing that energy and having like a shared vision. Uh, Another question, I just have a few left, is what does freedom mean to you?
Yeah, so freedom. So it's in terms of like, so freedom is deeply connected with autonomy. Autonomy is the ability to freely make decisions without coercion, and then and so obviously decision making then inform action. In particular, freedom and nature are deeply connected as well. Nature, when I talk about nature, I don't mean the number of trees. I actually mean like there's something deeper within us. You know, it's like the ascending. There is the ascending part of nature, which is like to do with like growth and also involves struggle and upwards movement. And the goal of our struggle is to increase or to multiply that which is good and beautiful and true, and to oppose that which is bad and ugly and false.
Okay, okay. And then I see the your background. Is first of all, I recognize that concept from they must have used that as concept art from like Mass Effect. I don't know if you're familiar with like the
Yeah, no, Mass Effect.
yeah. So
I think it's yeah.
But my next question was basically, you know, I saw in Rojava that, you know, you're working on solar projects and that sort of thing. I feel like today the association with increased technology is against, you know, the nature that you said, and just kind of in general living a authentic life and that sort of thing. So I'm just wondering on your thoughts on the possibilities, especially in the future, for natural life and technology to exist in harmony.
Yeah, within so you know our conceptualization is that there is a state civilization, you know, and there is a what we call the democratic nation, and all of the wealth and everything that's created essentially or value creation occurs within society or this democratic nation, and the state civilization is essentially a parasite. They extract value from society. If we go, and this goes back to the very origin of human civilization. Like, if, for example, I'm just going to pull it up now, just so that other people can do this alongside me, is go to the entry for civilization on Wikipedia. Where is it? I'm going there now. What? Sorry, it took me to German Wikipedia.
Oh, maybe your VPN or something.
Yeah. Civilization. Okay. Okay. Let's read some of this stuff. So, civilizations are organized in densely populated settlements divided into hierarchical social classes with a ruling elite and subordinate urban and rural populations. Civilization concentrates power, extending human control over the rest of nature, including over other human beings. So, but basically, that definition of civilization is the civilization that we've come to be familiar with, which in the earliest development of civilization, there was actually this explosion of different civilizational forms, but it was the Assyrian military dictatorship which waged war on the other civilizations, basically enslaving everybody. And you know, that became the origin of the modern legacy of civilization as we know it today. So
Hmm.
our role or our job essentially is to construct a new form of civilization, a democratic civilization or a free civilization. In particular, if you look at technology, there are two divergent legacies inside of technology that have always kind of been alongside each other. And that is the legacy of technology, the state civilization influenced technology, and the democratic technology or democratic techniques. So in particular, we can see that today. We can see, for example, like all the technology that's associated with surveillance, of automated weapons, of drone weaponry. Now they have drones that can just spend hours and hours in the sky circulating, monitoring one area of the ground. If there's any movement, it eliminates the target immediately. They even have highly precise type of missile called a ninja missile. And it's not a missile that explodes on impact. It's a ninja missile that shoots ninja swords at the target at a very small areas, highly precise, but can eliminate an individual human being. So we now, nation states now have invented automated AI drone weapons that fly really, really high in the sky, 15 kilometers up, and can eliminate individual human targets without any collateral damage, which I think is incredibly fucked up and dystopic. Also, CBDCs. You know, there's all the kind of people get excited about UBI or the left wing people like, oh, universal basic income. I can have free money for doing nothing. That's like a scam. It's a trap because it's like, oh, come into the CBD system, which is essentially Western states trying to copy the Chinese social credit scoring system, which that means in China they have this system where if you hang out with the wrong people, or you're late for meetings, or you don't have correct social conduct, you get a lower social credit score, which means, you know, maybe you can't get a train ticket, you have to take the bus instead, or you can't rate a certain apartment. So suddenly your like social ranking as defined by the state becomes important. So with CBDCs, they're trying to create this system of like incentives, you know, like where, oh, we can like manage citizens using these little credits, where before like we had this system like of like decentralized banks, like many small like local community banks, but then there's been a process of centralizing that into a few really big banks which the state can control. It's all about power, essentially, like controlling more and more of the society and limiting all of the space for freedom. And now the central bank digitization is the final phase of that. It's like, oh, we don't actually need any bank. We just need a central bank. So it's just like having a server in, you know, the European Central Bank, and they can control who gets credits and go, oh, you get some UBI, you know, blah, blah, good slave, etc. So that's another example of state civilization technology. Any of the technology which is connected with surveillance capitalism, you know, this apparatus of tyranny, you know, like the business model by Silicon Valley big tech, which is all about like harvesting people's clicks in order to sell it to marketing. Mm-hmm. So that's an anti-freedom, anti-nature side of technology. But then what is the side of technology that's empowering, that's good? Well, it's for example, DAOs. DAOs enable groups of people to pool their capital together, because in a marketplace, your voice is only as strong as the money that you can put down. It's like when you're on a poker table and you have a big pile of chips, you can bully the weaker stacks, you can bully the smaller players. What DAOs enable you to do is to pool capital and to, as a group of people, to direct that capital. So like it enables a community to form and to be powerful. You know, any technology which is inherently democratic or enables like people to build infrastructure. So for example, Linux, you know, like I can use Linux to combine computers together to build systems, you know, even distributed systems. Yeah, yeah. So to continue, other examples of, you know, freedom tech, anti-censorship tools like Tor enable people to row around censorship, to have free access to information. Even the Kalashnikov, like when the Kalashnikov was invented, suddenly many different people had the ability to resist against occupying forces. That's why so many organizations or groups in the third world, they have a Kalashnikov as a symbol on their flags, because it was something that enabled suddenly is a great equalizer of power between groups of people. The printing press, that's a major freedom technology, gave people free access to information.